So this talk is about free-to-play the indie way. As with every talk, you should always ask the question, who is this person talking to me? So my name's Jason FADER. I've been in the game industry for about 15 years now. I started at Blizzard Entertainment, working on the titles that you see on the screen. I was primarily a tools programmer. After that, I started my own company, Iocane Studios, with a few friends of mine. It was very, very indie. We released a game called Thread Space Hyperball, and then worked on the Flash version of an old game called Star Control. And shortly after that, the economy kind of went a little south, and we had to find work at other places, and I found myself at Obsidian Entertainment, where I was the lead producer on several projects. I was on Fallout New Vegas, the Fallout New Vegas DLCs, and then a few other projects which I can't talk about. Then after that, more economy problems, and I found myself back at Iocane, rebooting it, bringing the band back together, working on our current game, Steam Bandits Outpost, which is a free-to-play game. And then somewhere in between there, since, I don't know, I have so much time on my hands, I'm also the president of the IGDA in Orange County. If you guys are, Orange County's in Southern California, if you're not from the area, and the IGDA stands for International Game Developers Association. It's a nice community that helps game developers out and gives talks like this and stuff. So, what does this talk about? It's always good to start with an introduction. By the way, I should probably mention, I'm going to be drinking from this periodically. I've kind of lost my voice since it's the third day. This, mostly an energy drink, maybe something else as well, to ease up the nerves. You guys know. Also, I want to start with a few apologies in advance. This talk was originally slated to be on Tuesday, but sadly, my flight was canceled right as I boarded the plane. They said, sorry, mechanical failure, this flight's canceled, we're going to have to rebook you, and I missed all of Tuesday of Casual Connect. Those things happen, United. And then more mix-ups. And then there was another thing I wanted to apologize at, which is if I slur my words at any point. But don't worry, it'll be fine and fun. Let's see. So this talk, mostly for indie developers, but there's some humor in it as well. So if you're not interested in this stuff, stay for the laughs. Maybe not. I mean, maybe I'm just playing it up a little too much. We're going to be talking about free-to-play models. Not fashion models, but the actual business models. That would be weird. Shameless plugging, because that's what you do at these talks. You talk about what you're working on and, that sort of thing. And then pictures, because pictures are really useful for people. And then another cool thing, Q&A. I particularly love talking about time travel in space, so any questions about that, if you want to talk about, I don't know, Doctor Who or Continuum, which is a great show if you're not watching it. Yeah, you know. Yeah. Let's see. So to get started, is stuff showing up? Yeah. So the free-to-play spectrum, as I like to call it, using the Force, because I like using examples. For those of you that are not familiar with Star Wars, there's this Force, this thing. It's almost like magic. We're not going to talk about midichlorians, because that's, let's not go there. Prequels, meh. So this will say more in the original trilogy. So the first type of monetization we have is cosmetic-based, where you're selling things that primarily affect the visuals of a character, but don't impact gameplay. And what I like to use analogies to equate these things. So cosmetic side is the light side. This is more akin to Yoda. It's as light as you can go, totally not evil. Next we have pay to boost. And what that means is you allow players to purchase XP boosts for a limited time, so get an extra 25% experience for the first hour or something by paying some sort of a premium. Again, this is not too terribly evil, since you can sort of limit this and gate it and cap it over time. And this is more of an Obi-Wan Kenobi sort of thing, not as light as Yoda. I mean, nobody messes with the Yoda, but still unquestionably light. And then the other thing, which is kind of in the middle gray area, pay for convenience. And what that means is essentially you can limit your game if it's an RPG or a collecting game, limit the amount of inventory space a player has, or put certain constraints on what they can do, but then lift those constraints gradually if they put down money. A lot of players are not okay with this. Some are. It's kind of a middle ground. Kind of just put up with it. It's neither light nor dark. So it's more the Jar Jar Binks of this whole spectrum. Something in between. Some people are okay, some people aren't. Personally, I'm not too much of a fan of it, and that's the only prequel reference. I'm sorry, I know I said there wasn't going to be, but you got to talk about Jar Jar. The next is paying for experience in gold. This is clearly dark because you're circumventing the challenge of the game. If you allow somebody to buy levels or buy gold, it's essentially using a cheat code in a console. You're selling cheats. And for game designers in the audience, this is horrible because game designers spend all of their time balancing a game, making sure everything's right and fun, and then if a player can just hit a button and put money in and just totally skip all the content that you worked so hard making, it breaks their heart. But it still makes money. So keep in mind, none of these are good or bad per se. I mean, it depends on the market you're going for. I'm just equating them to different sides of the force. For example, the dark side of the force is pretty freaking effective if you're in combat or doing something, so the right tool for the right job. And for XP and gold, we're going Vader. So the next thing, playtime. Now this is, to me and to a lot of fans, I researched like a bunch of stuff in communities and just sort of feeling out how people felt about these things. What it means to monetize playtime is you have an energy mechanic of some kind, and this energy permits the player to perform actions, and this energy runs out unless they pay money or nag their friends. This is typically the most frowned upon aspect of monetization because people don't like being nagged, and it's almost like, let's use this analogy. Let's say old school like 1930s or 40s mafia, where like, oh, they're at a small laundromat cleaners. It'd be a shame if you were robbed overnight, but you know, if you pay us some protection money, we'll let you keep operating as usual. You know, something like that. And that is clearly Emperor Palpatine. So, now that we understand those basics, I'm going to take a brief drink again. Throat's just getting dry. It's the third day. That's the other thing I wanted to apologize for. If I start getting raspy, that's why. This should have been on Tuesday, but we're all here. It's fun. So, now with this clear explanation, monetization stuff, cool animations. So as far as, let's look at a game like Path of Exile. For those of you that are not familiar with Path of Exile, it's sort of new. It is an RPG very similar to Diablo, but purely free to play, and they only monetize the cosmetic side, and they're doing pretty well for themselves. There's some numbers online about how they've been doing. They're not wealthy beyond their wildest dreams, but they're earning a living. It is a way to make games, and they don't want to buy a yacht. They just want to make games they're passionate about, and they're listening to their community. They don't have any other monetization angles, no pay to boost, no pay to convenience, purely cosmetic based, and it's working out really well for them. The next is League of Legends, which some of you love games. League of Legends, for those that don't know, is a MOBA. That's an acronym for the type of game it is. It's basically competitive. It's an e-sport now. And what players can do in that is they can buy cosmetic stuff, new skins, and they can also buy boosts, which help accelerate them a bit in the gameplay, but doesn't really circumvent the challenge. It just accelerates things a bit. But it's still a challenge because it doesn't give them an edge over other players. It just means they need to spend less time. Then the other side, Star Wars: The Old Republic. How could I not mention that in something that is Star Wars related? And the interesting thing about Star Wars is it started as a subscription-based MMO, where you had to purchase the game and then pay monthly to resume playing. About, I think, a year into it, probably a little bit less, they changed their model to a free-to-play system, where you can now just download the game without paying any money and play all the way through the end, but they cap certain things. For example, they limit how many instances you can go through. If you're not familiar with those, it's basically dungeons that are resettable, or caves and stuff like that. But if you pay some money, you can increase that capacity per week. And they also have pay to boost, so you can buy XP gains or reputation stuff. And they also have pay to cosmetic or vanity based. We get flavor pets or like little miniature baby tauntauns that follow you and cute stuff like that. Next on the spectrum, which I'm sure all of you have heard of, Clash of Clans. Now, Clash of Clans, they do pay for experience/gold. In Clash of Clans' case, it's pay for their currency by using their gem system. You can just buy your way up to compensate for all these things. And it's mostly a competitive game, so typically the XP gold purchasing stuff tends to be more successful in competitive environments because everybody wants to compete with one another. And they also have a bit of a playtime thing as well, where there's a certain limit that your shield is open if you're familiar with Clash of Clans. And then on the far side of the spectrum, the Emperor Palpatine, which I'm sure you all are familiar with, is Farmville. Now, I'm not saying Farmville is bad. I might be saying slightly evil, but only in that they cut off your playtime after a certain amount of time, unless you bug your friends, you run out of energy. The latest incarnations of the game are sort of taking a step back from that a little, but I'm just looking at how these things initially started and just plotting these trends. Speaking of trends, let's look at charts, because charts, you need charts in these talks. So all this data right here, you can look at it online. It's from Google Trends. It's a really, really great search tool. If you just Google the word trends, Google actually has a software suite where you can enter various search terms and see how successful or how often people are searching for those words. Since it's pretty hard to get a lot of vital stats on like a 1-to-1 ratio, this is pretty much the best approximation I could find, which is just seeing how popular it is in Google, because everybody uses Google. And it's pretty sort of accurate. The dates are somewhat a little faded, but if you look at it, we can see in 2010, Farmville, huge spike. That's roughly along like when things really started to take off for them. And then a pretty steep decline. And then picking up after that slowly and gradually, League of Legends gaining popularity. And then they're kind of like petering off a little bit, but they'll probably stabilize because they're playing the whole esports angle. Star Wars: The Old Republic, that initial spike, that's when they went free to play. And, oh no, that was their launch. And then if they didn't go free to play, they'd probably just decline even further. But since transition to free to play, yeah.
What's the y-axis? Is it money or is it downloads?
Searches. Since most of these companies don't really expose their numbers, what I'm looking at is essentially user interest or community interest. So how often people are looking up these games, and Google tracks all of that stuff, and it's public. So this is a good way to correlate a lot of divergent data. It works with anything really. I mean, if you just want to see, I don't know, how popular Reddit is compared to something awful from the early 2000s or something, you can plot out that trend, and Google's been tracking all this stuff. Like I said, it's not 100% accurate, but it gives you a ballpark idea of relative popularity. The next game, Clash of Clans, you can see roughly around 2014 and continuing into like current present stuff, they're taking off like wildfire. And then Path of Exile, which I mentioned before, has 2 spikes. One of those spikes is from when they launched their open beta, where anybody could play, and so they gained a lot of momentum and interest. And then the next spike is when they launched. Now, even though some of these things are leveling out on a baseline, most indies you don't need to be rich. You just need to make enough to have a better way of living, to eat. And then build up from there. The indie way typically is, and for those of you that were at the prior talk, like that guy was talking about other ways of doing things, but in my mind, you need to start small, take baby steps gradually, figure out your logistics, get your feet on the ground, and then you grow your company from there. If you try to go too big overnight, you're just going to go Krispy Kreme all over the place. If you don't know the Krispy Kreme story, they basically started, and then they exploded over like a year, and then they had to collapse a little because they grew too fast. Whereas like other companies that just kind of like, kind of edge out, like let's say Oracle and Microsoft, like it's a gradual thing. So another example I like to use, and you guys might not be familiar with this, there's an MMO that's mostly PC called World of Tanks. Highly lucrative. I wonder if I can see my notes on here. I have a bunch of notes on here, but I'm just winging it because I can't see it on this, but I remember things very well. So World of Tanks, I believe last year netted close to, I don't know, 800 million or 600 million. It's a PC game, competitive. And the fascinating thing is it started out as pay to win, meaning it's a competitive game and you can purchase like the XP gold mechanic to make yourself stronger. So I'm sure you guys are familiar with the term whales. That's used often in like the free-to-play circles. World of Tanks, they would analyze the people that were spending the most money, focus on them, and these people would pay to get an edge competitively over everybody else. However, interesting thing happened. Last year, World of Tanks changed their model. And I have a few quotes, because quotes are great too. I won't read it, you guys can read it. But basically, what they found was they were losing users because you'd have these very overpowered, the whale players that were very strong, and it was ruining the experience for the players that weren't spending as much money. So it almost created, I don't know, a 1%er sort of thing. And so they were losing users. And when you lose users in these games, you tend to die out. And here's another quote if you'd like to read it. And so what they did was they said, well, we really want to retain users. So last year, they patched the game, completely changed their monetization angle, and now it's just pay for cosmetic. So you can get new skins for your tanks or other cool frilly things, but nothing which impacts gameplay. And since doing that, they've maintained their momentum, and they're still bringing in quite a bit of money. So I believe this is sort of a sign of the times of gamers just rising up and getting frustrated with the old, like, whale, dolphin, minnow. So if you're not familiar with like that whole hierarchy, yeah, some people here have heard it. She's laughing in the back, so she knows what I'm talking about. it might have worked in the past, and it might work in certain markets, and definitely in certain countries. But for indies, I mean, you need a lot of resources to really execute well on that. And so I'm going to do the shameless plug thing that I was talking about and talk about what we're doing and my rationale for going down that. But another drinky. And feel free to ask questions as we're going, because apparently there's no talk after this, so we've got plenty of time. Yes, you in the yellow and purple.
Where do you see pay for content going? What's that in your list?
So the question is, where do I see pay for content going? Pay for content is sort of a traditional DLC or downloadable content approach. That's not going to die. There's several games that are doing an episodic sort of style, so Telltale is a great example. They did the Walking Dead adventure game. Right now they're working on a Game of Thrones adventure game, which I cannot wait to play. So if anybody from Telltale is watching this, I would love to get into your beta. So, they are a thriving company, and they live off of the pay-for-content model where it's episodic. And so you start the game, and they might even offer like the first episode for free, and then each subsequent episode would just cost like $5 or $10. But the problem with the viability of that model is, in order for it to succeed, you need to retain every user each step of the way, and the odds of that actually happening are very slim, because as you progress through episodes, like right now I think they're in season 2 of Walking Dead, it requires that other people that you've played the prior ones, and so it's kind of banking on maintaining that momentum, and it's a bit riskier. Some developers can do it if they have a proper style for their game design, but most that I've seen that have attempted it haven't done too well. But if you do like large DLC packs, like expansion packs, for example, World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft is not free to play. Well, it's a half step. They have a free to play demo thing. They release expansions periodically, like every year to 2 years. They charge about $40 to $50 for their expansions, and it keeps them going. It's still a relatively successful game. I believe the numbers that I looked up for that last year, World of Warcraft brought in about I think around 300 million or 200. Just under that, I think directly under that was Knights of the Republic, or Star Wars: The Old Republic. Knights of the Republic is the old RPG. The Old Republic pulled in around 150. And so free-to-play model still viable. It's definitely not going to overtake WoW, but they're doing pretty well for themselves. From what I hear, EA is very happy with them. Yeah.
We talked about this yesterday. The notion that there might not be a monetization model with gaining experience and improving equipment without monetizing it, but it might hurt the multiplayer population if a person who's time restrained wants to come to the game and they can't compete because the other players have put hundreds of hours in and leveled up their stuff. So I would think that would be something that people would think about too, if you want to maximize the number of players, right?
It depends on the type of game. So the question was, since I need to repeat it for the microphone and stuff, there are games which have come out in the past that monetize the leveling and buying experience so that players can catch up with others, and how that will work in the future. And from all the data that I've been looking at, it's still going to be around, mostly in competitive games, like Clash of Clans or other PvP like World of Tanks or League of Legends games. For games that are mostly, I'd say, core experience centric, like the game I'm about to talk about, or the Telltale games like Walking Dead or Game of Thrones, probably won't be too viable, because if you allow people to boost their experience, they're going to be zipping through all the content, and the reason why they're playing those games is to experience that single enclosed content. So for multiplayer competitive games, absolutely, that's still going to be viable. Yeah. One of the things that I think we were discussing is the possibility of capping it. So, for example, if you have a level cap in your game at like level 50, allow them to boost themselves to level 40. So it's a very accelerated experience from 1 to 40, but once they hit 40 to 50, they need to go through the same progression as the other players did. So it basically gives them a jump start, and that one isn't frowned upon too much, and actually World of Warcraft does that. There's a new expansion coming out. If you purchase it, you can fast track one of your characters to the start part of that expansion. And any character, like just a level 1 character, I think. And that's good because it's a very daunting task to have to play through a lot of the game's core content all over again just to experience the new content that they have just released. So it's very, very smart to do that. You need to be careful though, because you don't want it to exceed where the end game is at. So for example, in World of Tanks or League of Legends, you don't want players that are spending money that are becoming stronger and better than other players at that top tier, because then you see the phenomena that happened to World of Tanks, which is they were losing a lot of their players because of that frustration mechanic. That kind of answer your question?
Absolutely.
Cool. So, Steam Bandits. Our philosophy, the gamers always come first. And what that means is we put ourselves in the shoes of our audience. Because all of us on the team, I run a small indie studio, we love playing games. And we want to make a game that we would play, that others would enjoy. So whenever we think about what we want to monetize or what we want to release as content, we first ask ourselves, what do gamers want? Not how do we make the most money, but what would they like to see? Everybody says they want everything for free, but there's a threshold for what people consider to be fair to purchase things. So there's a reasonable thing, I'd say, a happy medium between charging too much and charging not enough. And communicating with your player base is definitely one of the critical points in achieving that. The other thing that we do is we try to resist the dark side. It is very, very tempting to go full pay to win, make a lot of money, but again, it's short-term thinking. As we've seen from other games that have gone heavily pay to win, at least, and I'm looking at mostly U.S. games because I'm not overly familiar with the non-U.S. market, so I'm just going to talk about what I know. I mean, so I can be honest about these things. And it's tempting to want to make a lot of money, but I think our philosophy is to be more forward-thinking. Think about the long-term plan. We have a 5-year plan for the games we want to make. We're not trying to get rich quick overnight. We just want to make enough so that we can fund the future games and build upon that over time, because companies can last for a very long time. But if you don't plan things out right, or if you burn your fuel off too quickly, you're not gonna get to your destination. So I encourage all indies to be as forward-thinking as possible, and just to start small and do what you know. And don't try to make, I don't know, 30 million every month if you have a team size of 10. I can't even fathom what you would spend all that money on, but just go for meeting your life expectations and then build up from there. Let's see. So the next thing, no surprises. Players hate that. So if you release something and they were not expecting it, you're going to get a huge backlash from it, and your player base is going to dwindle. So one of the things, we are as transparent as possible with our community. So to talk more about the game, Steam Bandits is a free-to-play RPG inspired by games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy, those of you that are familiar with those. What we're monetizing, purely cosmetic, and also some boost stuff, but boost probably with a cap. And the cap is actually based on feedback that I've gotten from this conference. And that's the other thing of listening to your fan base and adapting to it, finding what people like doing, and just being as transparent as possible. We started with a Kickstarter, and so it forced us to be transparent with our backers. And over time, we found that it was very helpful because it gave us a portal into into their minds, into what they wanted. And it allowed us to tune the experience more towards our audience. It was great. Even if you're not launching a Kickstarter, have some sort of a forum or a venue to poll them, to ask them questions, communicate either on Facebook, because at the end of the day, these are the guys that are going to be giving you money, so you want to make sure that you're keeping them happy. And I don't mean keeping the 1% happy, keeping as many of them as happy as possible. Because if you cannot retain your users, you're not going to make really that much money. Unless you have a very aggressive monetization thing and there's just a wealthy 1% of millionaires that just love playing your game. If you want to go that route, it is possible. But I wouldn't really advise, I'd advise against it. It's the exception, not the rule. And so that leaves me to what I want to recommend for other indies that are considering things. First, ask yourself, should you really go free to play? There's a viable market out there where you can release games for money, and not just mobile games. I'm talking about the whole spectrum. This might be surprising to some of you, but what was the company? Gartner, I think. They do a lot of research analysis and stuff. You can Google all this information. There's going to be links at the end of this with all the sources and things, because you should always cite your sources. In their report for last year, I wish I had my notes, but I'll give you the rough approximations. Last year, the mobile market, I think, pulled in about 17 billion. The PC market pulled in PC or desktop, so PC, Mac, Linux, that sort of thing. That pulled in close to 22 billion. I think I said the mobile was like 17 billion. And the reason for that, oh, it's true. You're giving me that face, but look it up.
I'm a research analyst, but I'm not gonna.
Okay. Well, according to Gartner, then.
Yeah, according to Gartner.
Yeah.
I
So.
have my own numbers. I'll share them with you.
Okay. And these numbers.
Well,
We won't hold you to it. It's fine. Yeah. So this might be true or it might not be true, but according to this other research group, that is what they say. So that's the best information I can go off of right now, which is public. Okay. So the other thing, so the console market is making the most by far. I believe in 2013 they were at 40 billion. I wouldn't suggest getting into the console market unless you have connections with first-party developers or like Nintendo, Sony, or other things. Indies can make money on it, but again, it's a higher bar to entry than focusing on mobile stuff or PC. But if you want to go that route, you're more than welcome to. So the big thing to ask as far as choosing free to play or not is primarily what sort of game are you making and what does your audience want to see. So if you're making a game that has an MMO backend to it with a lot of server architecture, probably should be free to play. The subscription model, it's pretty much died out. In other countries, it's still good. I'm not going to talk about EVE Online. That is the weird gorilla in the room. We're not going to go near that. And their socio-political big galactic war stuff, which is really cool. If you have never heard of EVE Online, like they have some crazy scandals going on where people lose millions of dollars worth of property in that game. Like people have actually worked out how much this stuff is worth in real dollars, and it's mind-blowing. So let's see. So let's go to the next recommendation. Listen to your community. Like I was mentioning before, your community, they're going to be giving you the money for your game. So if you're not listening to them, you're releasing a game that they don't like, you're not going to make any money with it. So try to be as open as possible with them. Communicate, because at the end of the day, you're making the game for them. I mean, yeah, you're making it for yourself if you want to impart your vision as art and stuff, but really it's going to be played by them, so you should focus on their experience. And then the last thing is beware of the temptation of pay to win. I cannot emphasize that enough. It works in some markets for some people, but it just feels dirty. Unless you're okay going that route, but I wouldn't advise it, because I think that if we had more games that were just more honest and not pay to win and don't cross into that dangerous border of like having the whales dominate the PvP competitive games, we'd probably have a better gaming environment going on. And there are ways to make money without going pay to win. There are a lot of examples of it, more than just what I've cited. So, like I said, here's a bunch of links to things. This slide will be available online, of course. Gama Sutra is a great place if you're looking for articles about the industry. I'll just gloss over this because it's not terribly interesting. And so that's essentially it. It's a short and sweet talk, just some minor laughs for Star Wars buffs, just about some free-to-play things. If you guys have questions or you want to chat about stuff in general, I'm here. How are we doing on time? We're awesome. This was like dead on 30 minutes. I did not rehearse this. Yes, question.
Play to win. Is there a place for it where...
Play to win or pay to win?
Sorry, pay to win. Is
Okay.
there a place for it where, it feels dirty if the players kind of get tricked, right? But is there a kind of genre where there's an understanding that pay to win is the way to go and that it's accepted?
Absolutely. So the question is there a certain scenario where pay to win is accepted? Yes, casino games. You pay real money, and you can get more money that way. If winning is getting more money from casino games, then the more you pay, the more you win. I mean, not increasing your odds, but you can get more money indirectly. It's not a good answer to your question. That was more the joke answer. I have heard, for example, in China or Japan, especially in Russia as well, the pay-to-win model can work and is thriving there. I would strongly suggest researching that, since I'm not too familiar with those things, but I do know that it is a viable model in certain places. However, as a game designer, because I'm the creative director of the studio and stuff like that, and I also design our games, I would caution against it, because at the end of the day, we want to make, at least indies, we want to make games that are fun. that have an enriching experience that can inspire others. And if that is your objective, pay to win will not get that sort of experience from your end users ultimately. Yeah.
To add on to that, sorry, but you could theoretically have a pay to win where the other players are providing the either crafting or finding elements that are sold within the game that'll give the buyer an advantage, but because there's a transaction going on within the community, the resistance to it might be lower because you might be gaining a financial resource or something as the gamer who's selling the item to the other gamer who needs it because his skill level's not as
So
good.
you start turning it into an economy, essentially.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The other thing worth mentioning, which is kind of a gray area, which we're going to be experimenting with, is pay to load the dice. So in a lot of these RPG games, they operate off of loot tables, basically probabilities. So when you defeat a monster or you clear a mission, there's a percentage chance to get something really, really special. And one of the things that we're going to be looking into and talking to our community to see if they're okay with it is paying some in-game currency to sort of make you a bit luckier. So in that case, yeah, it's a gray area. So we're first going to see if our community is okay with it and likes that. But that's another thing where it's more pay to win-ish, but if there are players which are not paying, since it's based on probabilities, they can still get the same rewards. It's just the odds are better for those that are paying more money. Again, that's veering towards the dark side, but it's tough to think about. It depends on how well we can package it up and make it seem fair, or we might just not do it entirely. It really depends on what the community says. Yeah.
One other thing you could do is to have different levels of power. Not be able to actually meet people who are much weaker, like level them together.
Mm-hmm.
So you pay and you go to a different level, but at that level of power, you're just competing with that type of person.
Yeah, so
Beating up someone who just isn't paying you enough money.
yeah, so a tiered-based system, basically, where there are certain brackets. Hello, I'm turning to Sean Connery. Brackets where your users are paying, and then they can get into the top of that bracket. But to get to the next bracket, they need to play or succeed in there. So that way, you're sort of mitigating a lot of the discomfort that players would normally have in a pay-to-win environment. For example, you could have, like, let's say, a 3-tier system, and the first 2 tiers might have a pay-to-win sort of thing. But then to get from tier 2 to tier 3, you got to earn it, because that's the achievement tier. That's the tier that everybody wears as a badge of honor. But if you want to fast track yourself or do things to accelerate that, that'll probably be a bit more okay with players. More questions about random things. Ooh, let's go you.
Sure.
We got plenty of time. Apparently there's no other talk in here, and my voice is feeling fine, so fire away.
No, Drew.
That's a good idea. I like you.
Oh, yeah, that's my question. What are your thoughts on monetizing through ads versus in-app purchase?
So ad monetization is great, but you need to watch your users and make sure that they are not getting frustrated with too many ads. And I would highly recommend allowing an option for players to buy away the ads. And what that means is spending in-game currency to remove the ads completely, like a one-time fee, not a subscription fee, like pay us $2 a week and we won't show you ads. Should be a flat fee, just to be fair to people. Ads are a great way to make money initially, though, if you have enough users that are playing your game. Your user acquisition rate is good, or as I've heard it put, your AEM funnel from a lot of the AAA sort of like free-to-play people. And what that means is you have your acquisition, so how you acquire users, and then how you I forgot what the E was for. Engagement. Thank you. Bit too much of that. I'm going to ease up a little. And then M is the monetization. And typically, as you go down the funnel, you're going to lose a bit more and a bit more, and then what you monetize will just be a fraction of what you've actually engaged and acquired. So in those situations, I mean, you could just do your best. What was your question?
Follow up to his, which is, what's the best way to present ad removal? Because sometimes, I mean, one philosophy is that if you say, pay to remove ads, all of a sudden it says, oh, we know it's a bad thing, now pay us to get rid of it. Like,
I would suggest burying it in the options menu and make it a checkbox. So it's it's innocuous. It is there. It is available. But I mean, since ad revenue is another way that you're making money, players that are savvy enough tend to go into game options when they want to, for example, socially link their accounts to Facebook and such. And you can have a checkbox in there which has like maybe a little lock next to it. And if they tap on it, you can have a pop-up box which says, in order to remove ads, this will cost you X amount of microcurrency. And that way you're not advertising that you're removing advertisements, but it's still available. So if you have disgruntled players in your forums, your community managers can say, okay, you can remove them this way, or just have a FAQ on your website. And I don't know. You need to kind of like find the middle ground of not trying to encourage them to pay away the ads too much, but still maintaining the ads. Yes?
So, I mean, on that note, I don't necessarily agree that you should hide away that you can get rid of ads because, I mean, I used to work on a game called Gardens of Time, and we started putting in more ads, and we had it quite prominently, you can pay to get rid of this, because we had found that as soon as people start paying, they continue to pay. So it was trying to get people to become first-time payers, and once they've done that, then they're going to keep paying. So we wanted to make it.
So you give them a taste of the drug, and then once they're mildly hooked, then they continue coming back to you for more. Okay. I can see that working, and
it probably depends on the game.
it depends on your community ultimately. You don't need to hide the ad removal. I guess it just depends on your player base. If they're used to ads like the mobile market, maybe it's okay. Or you can even time it. So after they've been playing a game for a certain amount of time, like let's say they've been playing for 2 weeks, you can say, and maybe like in tooltips or help tips in a loading screen, by the way, you can remove ads by going into this menu if you don't like ads. That sort of stuff. So you can find some middle ground there. Middle ground is the name of the game. Yes, again.
So, I mean, I've started my own company, and
Congratulations. I believe it's about cats, isn't it?
no, but there is a cat on my logo. So.
You should look at her business card. It has cats on it.
Anyway, so and I'm doing free to play, and what I've done at work is I've said, I've written this list, my manifesto of non-evil free to play.
Well done.
Things that I will not want to do, and I was just wondering, like your strategy, like you very much don't want to pay to win. Was that something? Did you have to explicitly say? Like, did you set up a manifesto? How did you?
So. I'll give you the brief story. So when we launched our Kickstarter, we just wanted to do a generic steampunk town building game, and that was like one of the initial ideas. I myself don't really play a whole lot of the Facebook town building games, so I took 1 to 2 weeks. I downloaded all the popular games at the time. This was about 2 years ago. So I checked out Farmville, Smurf Village, all of these other ones. And as I was playing them, I wanted to shoot myself. I found all the mechanics they were having to be infuriating. As far as like the whole pay-to-win, energy-based monetization, it was frustrating because I felt it was coercive monetization. I felt like if I wanted to keep playing, I had to do something that I did not want to naturally do. And players are actually okay with giving you money as long as you make it worth their while. And so you can either have negative reinforcement or positive reinforcement. I mean, psychological stuff, essentially. And it's just about how far down the dark side you want to go. And there are ways to dress things up and limit things so that you could have like the XP boost thing but cap it. And again, that it might be a dark side trait, but it's used for good. For example, there are cases in games where there are Jedis that might be using dark side powers, but they use it for a positive thing. For example, and we're going to get a little nerdy here, there's a game called The Force Unleashed, where Vader had an apprentice. And this apprentice used a lot of dark side powers, but he was the good guy. He did good things. And so all of these things are tools in your toolbox, and these tools have been used for evil from time to time, but there is a way to also use them for good. And not those ways, there's a lot of games out there that are using them for one way or the other, and it just comes down to how creative and savvy you are. Yeah?
I just wanted to, not to be like poking a hole in everything, but technically with cosmetic, you can gain an advantage. Like in World of Tanks, for example, you're on a snow map, and you buy the white paint job. So there is a possibility to have an advantage with cosmetics.
True, and that would be that's not poking a hole. That's actually supporting it because that is using a light side power for evil.
Yes.
So it works both ways essentially. What was your question?
No, I was just gonna say you play League of Legends.
I don't.
Because because there's the same thing with League of Legends. There's a skin that actually makes it harder to tell when you have an ability active for one of the characters.
Yeah, exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
See, as soon as those are discovered, those should be patched out. Players should be refunded their currency. Once something cosmetic starts impacting gameplay, if that's not how you want your game to be, that is a bug at that point, and it should be fixed. It all comes down to what sort of features you want in your game and how you want players to feel about it. Yes, in the back, in the jacket.
Your game is single player, right? There's no multiplayer.
Sort of. So the whole story behind it is I worked on World of Warcraft, and I played WoW for several years. And one of the things that I didn't like about WoW is that you're playing with other people, and I kind of don't like people too much. I'm very introverted. I prefer to just stay with my cats. It's great. And whenever you'd run into dungeons or instances, sometimes you'd be in there with random people, and they could diminish the enjoyment of your gaming experience because they might not be very good at playing, or they might be very rude. And I wanted to have an experience for players that enjoy dungeon crawling environments or things like WoW, but give them their own self-contained experience. So in our game, we have dungeons that you can run through. It's a turn-based game, sort of like Final Fantasy. You go through dungeons, fight bosses, and you have a party with you, but it's all characters that you control. It's all on your own terms. And then the other half of the game is there's a town-building component, but not the evil part of town building. You basically have a base, and in that base there's harvesting and crafting. You can pick up blueprints and recipes while you're adventuring, go back to your base, and then build up cool new stuff for yourself, place decorations there, find pets that are roaming the wild, and then tame them if you have the right food or you can say the right thing. Bring them back, have them roam around, and it's very fun if you want to do like all that casual fun things. And it's asynchronous multiplayer in that you can visit your friends' towns and interact with their buildings. And we're still working on most of our social systems, but essentially we want to allow players to engage with one another socially and help each other out, but not nag them. So, for example, you can have a player that visits your town and interacts with your buildings. They get a boost from it. You get a boost from it. Everybody wins. And you visited somebody's place and you've seen maybe something that they've purchased roaming their town. For example, they might have a cool steampunk silver dragon flying around. You click on it and think, I would like a silver steampunk dragon. That looks amazing. It breathes fire. And so you click on it and it says, sure, you can have one, and it only costs you 10 cents. And so you get one, and they're like, would you like to get another one for 5 cents? Ooh. And it doesn't do anything. And in this game, however, you can bring your pets into your party, level them up Pokemon style, but the Silver Dragon, which would be a premium, has the same abilities and same stats as the Bronze Dragon, which you can craft at your engineering workshop. It's just another skin for it. And so that's primarily what we're banking on is we're trying to get the town building crowd, show them what more, I don't want to bash like the other town building games too much, but show them what some RPG stuff are, and bring them in, but give them the town building experience they're familiar with, and then if they want to, they can take their character out, go adventuring, go through combat and those things. And we're also appealing to adventuring players that like old RPGs or have played modern MMOs and are kind of burnt out and want something more casual. They can play that adventuring side, and if they want to build up their town, they can, or they can have a completely fun experience just adventuring. Both of these separate game systems are opt-in, so you can pick one track you like, dabble in both, basically find the thing you like. And the use case that happened with that is, I love playing adventure games. My girlfriend loves playing town building games. I would like to play games with her. And so I'm going to play this game. I'm going to min-max, go through all the dungeons, get a bunch of great loot. My girlfriend's going to build up an awesome town. I'm going to visit her town from time to time so I can get cool buffs and, fancy potions and stuff. And maybe while I'm out in the field, I might find a cool pet, and I might have the stuff to tame it. So while adventuring, I bring the pet back, trade it with her, maybe put it on the auction house or something. And so it's indirect activity, and we're having separate experiences, but we're still playing together. And we don't have to compromise. I don't have to play the games that she plays because they're not my cup of tea. She doesn't have to play the games that I play because that's not her cup of tea. But we're playing games together. And that's what it's all about, bringing people together and good feelings. Yeah, happy time.
The reason I ask is because, a PvE experience is so much different than a PvP experience, and it drastically changes the spectrum of good versus evil. I mean, something can be good if you're paying to win against, you know, big bad boss Zarkon, who's run by the computer, and you haven't been able to beat that guy for like 53 tries, you're like, okay, I will pay $1.50 to kick your butt, boss Zarkon. But that's totally different than I'm like, yeah, I haven't been able to beat you, I'm going to pay $5 to beat you. And
That's
so
a really
just
good point. The
entirely
evil
different.
component really implies the multiplayer.
Yeah.
Unless,
Well, you can also kind of be evil in a PvE sense. I mean,
Totally be evil, I'm not saying
Yeah.
that for a second.
it just comes down to what are you and your team, if you do like share decisions with your team, what are you guys comfortable with? Do you want, and what is your community comfortable with? Or you don't have to listen to your community. You don't have to listen to anything that I've said, really. I mean, I'm not going to control you or tell you what to do. This is just my perspective and my take on things, and hopefully this might educate, or the people on the internet. Hello, internet. I'm just sharing my thoughts. I mean, by and large, when you attend most of these talks, you're just hearing a lot of opinions, and some of them might help you, some of them might not. It's really just what you take away from it. Yes?
Your studio's name, Princess Bride?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. But that would be absolutely inconceivable, sir. Any further questions?
Clearly, you have a dizzying intellect.
Huh? Clearly. And I've developed an immunity to iocane. Okay, so if there are no further questions, I think I've taken up enough of your time. We have a booth downstairs at the Indie Prize area. We're right across from the Native X booth. They have like a green logo and stuff. Also, if there's my information, feel free to email me, ask further questions. I think I'm done talking. My throat hurts.